Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer are set to meet with Chinese officials for trade talks in Switzerland this weekend. Ahead of the meeting, President Trump seemed to suggest he'd be open to lowering the tariff rate on Chinese imports. The president wrote on Truth Social Friday, quote, 80% tariff on China seems right, up to Scott B., referring to the Treasury Secretary. Later at the White House, President Trump was asked about that number ahead of the upcoming talks.
Have you given Bessent a number of how low you're willing to go?
Yeah, I am.
Are you
What's
willing
the
to share
number?
that number?
80%. But I put out a number today, 80%, so we'll see how that all works.
CBS News correspondent Nikole Killion is at the White House. Nikole, what are the expectations for these talks?
Well, I think the White House is taking a wait-and-see approach here to see how things go this weekend as the Treasury Secretary and the U.S. Trade Representative meet with their Chinese counterparts. I mean, you heard the president there say that he did give the secretary a number, although he wouldn't disclose that number. And as you mentioned, on his Truth Social post, he tossed out this idea of lowering the tariffs from 145% down to 80%. Well, the press secretary said earlier today that that really was just a number that the president was throwing out there. But again, they're going to kind of see how things go with these negotiations over the weekend.
President Trump also suggested he's open to taxing wealthier Americans. What's his stance on that?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, this is something I asked the press secretary about as well, and the president also responded to some questions about it just a short time ago. Look, you know, he talked a short time ago in the Oval Office about redistribution, if you will, that he's not completely opposed to the idea of potentially raising the tax rate on top earners, you know, a tiny tax on the rich, as he put it on his Truth Social post earlier today, although he kind of said that Republicans shouldn't do it, although he might be okay with them doing it. But look, in terms of Capitol Hill, many Republican leaders have already started to throw cold water on that idea, most notably Leader John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, who in an interview today said, you know, that Republicans are all about lowering taxes. They don't want to raise taxes on anyone. So that is going to be something that may have to be massaged or negotiated further with lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Certainly worth pointing out that the head of the House Ways and Means Committee was here at the White House earlier today, also meeting with the president. Of course, this is the committee that's tasked with crafting the tax portion of that bill and is expected to mark up that bill soon as they try to fine-tune these details. So certainly time will be of essence, though, because lawmakers also heard from the Treasury Secretary earlier today in a letter where the Treasury Secretary said that the debt limit needed to be addressed by mid-July. That's where the country could hit that limit. So again, that is a critical deadline now facing lawmakers as they also try to incorporate some debt limit language into this big, beautiful bill that the president wants.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller also said Friday the administration is, quote, actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Some of our viewers may be familiar with that legal term, but please remind us what that is. How could this work? Is that even possible?
Yeah, well, this basically allows people who are detained to challenge their detentions in court. It has been something that has been long-standing, but Stephen Miller was asked earlier today here at the White House whether or not that was something that the president or the White House, more specifically, was looking at potentially eliminating. Now, Stephen Miller said he believes the Constitution is clear on this issue, and of course, this comes at a time, certainly as the president and the administration try to ratchet up their mass deportation efforts. But at the same time, obviously, some of these are getting bogged down in the courts. And so that's kind of what sparked the questioning to Miller earlier today. But as you know, ability of somebody to challenge their rights in courts is a pretty essential part of the rule of law, even predating this country. So certainly raising a lot of eyebrows with that comment earlier today.
Nikole Killion, thanks so much. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now. So let's go ahead and talk about this floated idea of bringing the 145% tariff rate on Chinese imports to 80%. Would that still be a non-starter for small businesses? And how did markets respond?
It would definitely still be a non-starter for small businesses, because let's just do the quick math. If I am importing $1,000 worth of goods, an 80% tariff means I need to pay $800 on top of that. And so for small businesses, they don't have a lot of room in their budgets.
Yeah, and scale that to what they're buying in bulk to ship over.
Right. and even big businesses. I mean, that's something that will also get passed on to the consumer. And I was reading this study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, and they did an analysis of how much a 60% tariff on China, so this would be more, and a 10% tariff on the rest of the world, which we know from the UK trade deal yesterday, the president is saying 10% is going to be the baseline. So those two together would raise inflation by 2 percentage points. So right now it stands at 2.4%. We're talking about something above 4%. Not near the 9% that we've seen before, but it certainly goes in the wrong direction.
Over what period of time would we see that 2% increase?
Over the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so,
much further from the Fed's
from the 2% target. Exactly.
Tesla stock surged on Friday. This is the third consecutive week of gains. What's driving the spike?
So Tesla's an interesting one because it doesn't always track the fundamentals of the company. In fact, we saw this week, their deliveries, which is a proxy for sales numbers, in China went down 26% from March to April. Now, there's a lot of competition in China, but there's also these trade tensions, a lot of negative brand for an American company. What's driving this, though, is mostly, one, the trade deals, the possibility that's going to be good for Tesla, just in terms of China being more, or Chinese citizens more being willing to buy a Tesla, but also the robo-taxi launch is coming up at the beginning of June. A lot of investors are excited about the possibility of another revenue stream for Tesla as they move more towards that automation push.
Kelly O'Grady, thank you.